I'm so used to that being what we finish with. That's because that's
Well,
our intro, ladies and gentlemen.
it's our intro.
But today it's our intro, indeed, because we didn't have another one prepared without a countdown that with Ahsoka in it. Because if you remember, everybody, welcome back to the Rule of Three, where there's just two of us this time. Last time that we got a chance to chat with you all specifically about Star Wars, my goodness gracious, it was when Ahsoka was on, which it's been a minute, folks. So glad to be back. And obviously, as we can see, it's not just myself here. Berger-Rokar, which is my Star Wars name for anyone that's wondering where the heck that came from. I also have, of course, Fever Dreamland Theater. Anthony, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing very well. Happy to be here, man.
That's good. Well, I cannot believe that we are here because it's taken some planning and it's taken some grinding with the schedules. And, we definitely plan for what it's worth to be back. I won't overpromise anything, but as far as some more Cinema Squad members talking about even more subjects in the near future. But in the meantime, man, there is indeed some Star Wars news to catch up on. Anthony, this is one of those where I obviously want to dive right into it. I will say, of course, what's up to the people in the comments, but I just have to ask, before I even get to that, what are your thoughts on just the current state of Star Wars? It's a very vague question, but I asked that on purpose to get us started, right? So what is your thoughts on the current
Okay.
Star
All
Wars?
right. Let me see. I want to see if I could say this the right way. I feel like in a vacuum, meaning like disregarding everybody killing each other out in the world over Star Wars, I'm fine with Star Wars the same as usual. I'm looking forward to Skeleton Crew, which we'll discuss later on. When I look at it as of what's going on and the different things, it's very hit and miss. I still have hope for the future with Star Wars overall, though.
Okay,
I always root for Star Wars. And I have hope for the future with it.
So you wouldn't be one of those people that would be in the current pool, if you will, of Star Wars is dead.
No, God, no. I wouldn't say that. There have been some hits and misses, and there's some pretty big misses. We're going to be discussing tonight. Acolyte and our feelings on that. I actually don't know. I get the vibe of where you are with the show, Jason, and I know where I am with it. So we'll see where that discussion goes. But yeah, again, man, it's just I take it as like hits and misses. I'm curious what your thoughts on it on this. So since you brought it up, and if you're thinking that Star Wars is like dead.
No, see, I purposely kind of like threw it out in almost a facetious like manner, presentation mode of like, do you think Star Wars is dead? Just because of, I think that's a bit ridiculous and absurd to say. I can almost guarantee you that there were probably people that were saying similar comments when the prequels came out, and I think that it's a bit over the top is a little bit. That's all I'll say, right? I mean, to each their own, right? We're all out our own opinions and everything. And hey, if you're someone that believes that the franchise is truly dead in the water, there's nothing they can do to change it, okay, that's fine. But I'm going to go as far as saying this with the utmost respect here. I think that's a bit delusional to think that way. I think when we talk like that, we forget how everlasting certain franchises and brands are, like past us as individuals. A lot of people that make those comments that'll say like Star Wars is dead. Dude, Star Wars has been around longer than you've been alive.
Yeah.
For both of us, I know it has. And it's one of those where I think it's fair to say that no matter how epically horrible anything is that they make, it seems like it's already kind of cemented itself into pop culture that it will probably sustain itself to some capacity for quite some time. I'm sure there will be a point in time down the road where, who knows, man, maybe there really actually is like no more Star Wars. It's kind of weird to think about that. But I don't picture that as like not being a reality. But I do think it's just funny to say like, because they haven't been making some good shows, that the franchise or the brand is dead. That doesn't.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lack of understanding as to the power of Star Wars as a name when we're going that far. But it doesn't change the fact that there is a lot to be considered with the impact that they are making on themselves, almost seemingly like openly and consciously at the moment, while, we're existing in this current time, right? So again, who knows what the future holds? But as of right now, they're not exactly doing a hell of a lot to shift the tide in their favor. There's one thing to go ahead and kind of start off with. I don't want to get too deep into the weeds of it of a conversation. I can't even actually because I haven't even seen the whole thing. But I think a great point to just like mention how this not started, but started catching some like hints of I don't know where this is going. We could easily see Mandalorian season 3. I think that's a big part of it. But in that, I did finish. But the Tales of the Empire. Did you watch Tales of the Empire?
No, I remember starting it off with that on a high note, and then just quickly getting bored by it. And you're gonna hear me say that a couple times tonight about a couple of the things, and it lost me. It lost me a little bit, and that's Star Wars shouldn't be doing that. Not for a nerd like me who's been around watching this stuff since the freaking early 1980s. I mean, I saw Return of the Jedi as a kid in the freaking theater. It was probably a re-release, but so yeah, I go back a long way with this, and so do you, dude. So do you as well. So, and a lot of us do. We shouldn't be getting bored by these things. That's a big no-no. That should not be happening. Geez. And I mean, to your point about like his Star Wars Dead, one last thing I'll say about that, as far back as Return of the Jedi, 83, there may have been people who got off the train then, like with like Ewoks, what the fuck? I'm out. And here we are, okay, so that's it. So those people left. I don't think they really left, but let's say they left, and here we are, this, so many years later, and Star Wars is still rocking and rolling, whether you love it or hate all of it. It is still out there, which tells me no matter how much anybody hates a given TV show right now, 10, 20 years from now, Star Wars will probably still be around.
Yes,
probably.
Exactly. And it is kind of funny, actually, when you bring up that exact specific example of the Ewoks. I only say that because, number one, I agree. I bet there were people walking out of the theater being like, that's it. Yeah. This is the dumbest thing they could have done. And right, this whole entire franchise is going nowhere. But and then it also reminds me, as far as like now people, they look back on that with a lot of nostalgia, right? It's just like, oh my God, man, how epic it was when the Ewoks helped take down the Empire. But in a way, that could be looked at as the equivalent of like Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. And it's like, okay, so they defeated Kang. How again? It's like, so there was a wave of ants. All right. A lot of them. They were also very evolved ants.
Yes. Yeah.
But anyway, so I do think that it's where I agree with all the sentiments there, and I think it's not really fair to kind of call the franchise dead. It's in a rough spot though, and to kind of bring it back to that whole Tales of the Empire thing. The only reason I wanted to bring that in was because again, you got Mandalorian season 3. I was already like, where are we going here? You know what I mean? Like, there's still some stuff that I kind of like, but it mostly and then we get into, again, like this animated series that realistically should have been a home run for them. Kind of a little bit of a layup, if you will, because did you watch Tales of the Jedi?
Tales of the Jedi I watched. So Tales of the Empire, to be clear, that's the one you're referring. No, wait, was it is that what it was called? The more recent one? Was it Tales?
The newest one's Tales of the Empire. And then, but Tales of the Jedi was the first one they did.
Okay, yeah. And so I'm sorry if I misspoke earlier, but like the later one is the one that I meant that I couldn't get into.
Right, absolutely.
Okay, so we're on the same page.
That's exactly my point. Is what I was going to bring up. It's way too perfect here, right? Literally, what I was going to say is like, if you watch Tales of the Jedi, or I think for anyone that has, it's very easy to pick up for most people. That was a very binge-worthy series, and not just because it was small episodes, but because it was a very interesting period within the Star Wars lore. It was a very unique perspective that we hadn't gotten a chance to see before as the fans, right? When it came down to it, that whole focus on Qui-Gon that we had never gotten a chance to really see, his relationship with Dooku, the whole situation with Ahsoka and everything going on with her as far as like that. But again, very interesting time period, right? Absolutely. This should have been a bit of a layup to do the same thing with the Empire and to go the direction they did. I don't even think it's bad that they focus on the characters they did. Like, some people are quick to be like, oh, so it's just because it's, I love how the conversation nowadays seems to be, so it's 2 female leads and blah, blah, blah. That is not a relevant discussion. And if you think that it is, just, you don't have any room here to have a discussion or argument with us, I guess, it doesn't make sense. It's not, you don't understand storytelling or the power of like behind a show and what it's supposed to be and do, if that's your argument. Because here's again the issue. I think going with Morgan Elsbeth and Barriss Offee, specifically in the time periods that they did. So we get a chance to see Morgan Elsbeth before her whole setup as far as where we saw in Mandalorian and Ahsoka. We got a chance to see Barriss Offee after the events of the Clone Wars when she had done that crazy betrayal on Ahsoka and now she's evil or whatever. Those are good ideas.
Yeah.
It's the execution behind them, man. I am right there with you. I swear, Anthony, I could not make it through the first episode of Tales of the Empire. Now, granted, I could be way too harsh on it, right? I'm not sitting here going like, oh, this is ridiculous. I need to turn it off. But what I will say is it's just like how you said, it was boring me. It didn't suck me in, if you will.
Yeah.
Pause. That, as far as like Tales of the Jedi did, right?
Yeah.
It's something where it just really wasn't there. It wasn't all there. So with that, it just seems like, okay, we have a little bit of a misstep, but to be fair, that misstep is with an animated series, and not like that isn't a knock to the brand, but it's probably not as big of a knock to the brand as like the big overall live action stuff, like Mandalorian season 3. That I think actually was probably a bigger misstep. You had such a high level of success with season 2. You had probably, some of the biggest amount of viewers that you had for any Disney Plus show, let alone Star Wars. And I think that was something where it was really just way to just go ahead and nosedive off a cliff after that. But anyway, with those two things being a little bit of missteps, then all of a sudden it brings us to The Acolyte. Right? Now, this was a show that, look, man, for all intents and purposes, it sounded really cool. When they first announced it, it was just basically presented. And did you hear it the same way? Because I feel like I've tried to look up stuff on this, and I don't really find too much like notated on it, but I could swear it was presented as a show about the Sith. Is that what you heard?
That's what I heard, and even just on a basic level, I tried looking up like, hey, let's just go back to the roots. What's just the most basic idea of what this show was supposed to be? And I printed out some stuff, but even my, I don't know if we can see this, even my printer had a problem with this show. There we go. Even my printer had a problem with this show, as you can see with the streaks. The printer didn't understand what it was supposed to. Okay, I do think that goes to what you're saying. Like, what is this show and what was it trying to accomplish?
Well, so let me just go ahead and ask this, right? So we both seem to have heard that this was supposed to be a show about the Sith, right?
Yes.
Do you, after seeing it in its completion, do you feel that your takeaway is that this was a show about the Sith?
No, I don't. I feel like it was getting there. There's elements in there. I thought, I mean, now that I'm thinking of it, I feel like early on, I do recall some interviews with that seemed to really highlight the fact that it was going to be a mystery. That got me interested. There was going to be lots of mysteries, and it's going to be like an onion where you peel back these different layers. I don't know how well that stinky onion analogy works. Maybe it's a little too appropriate. See, I thought we were going to good cop, bad cop this show, and I think I'm going to end up being the bad cop. I think that's more my thing. So yes, to answer your question, I think I felt like there was like, oh, it's going to be a show about Sith. I didn't quite get that vibe from it. I did hear other things about it being a show that was going to be about mysteries and stuff like that. Yes, there were mysteries in there, but then they were just quickly resolved, and we would move on to the next thing. And that's about where I felt like the writing started showing its cracks for me. I'm sorry if I can't say that more eloquently, but like just where like a thing would come up and I'd be like, oh, it looks like we're going somewhere interesting. I can't wait to see it's resolved. Okay, it's resolved. Lots of those kind of things, and then we would just move on to another thing. So and then in the end, what are we left with?
No, exactly. I think that was going to be my next question, actually, which is really perfect here. So, I was saying, do you feel like it was a show about the Sith? Because that's what it was presented as. And the next thing is, just like you mentioned, it's presented as a mystery. And then I was going to say, do you feel like it was a mystery? And apparently no. And honestly, well, I'll say this. Like, I agree with you that there are elements that are presented in a mysterious manner, right? There are things that are presented as though there is a mystery behind it.
We got the flashback, whether you liked it or not. And then that filled in some gaps in the story. Okay,
well, but that's a whole discussion within itself.
Okay, yeah.
Is because I know what you mean. Some gaps, but I would put a huge emphasis on some gaps because really, at the end of it, is like, did that backstory even provide us with a sufficient and worthwhile amount of information to feel like now all of a sudden we have some truly new perspective on what is taking place in the present times. I sure as hell did not. As a matter of fact, here's a great thing to go ahead and just start with. I know we did, forgive us in advance, everyone, because this is not going to be a very streamlined as far as like in order of episodes conversation here. But all right, we'll go ahead and start with this since we just kind of naturally gravitated towards it. So there's the flashback that is obviously centered around 4 particular Jedi, the ones that May seems to be after throughout the entirety of the series, and one of which is Torben, young Torben, right?
Yes.
Who I actually, forgive me, I can't even remember his name as an actor off the top of my head, but I like him as an actor. He's been in Game.
Definitely.
Yeah, he's been in Game of Thrones. Been as far as oh my gosh, what is that one war movie? Wow, I feel terrible. But there's a really good war movie that he's in that was like almost one take. It's really really good movie. If I think of it, goodness gracious, I will throw it out there and you should watch it. It's a good one.
Yeah. Okay. Dean Charles Chapman is at least the actor's name.
There we go.
I at least got that much. As far as the war movie, was it a recent war movie? Was it like 1917 or something like that? Maybe
1917.
All right, there we go.
Oh my gosh! And then here,
yeah, when you put our 2 brains together, you get one semi-functioning brain on this.
And that's all we need to do a YouTube.
That's all we need.
Yes. So there we go, right? So I like him as an actor. I think he's been in good stuff. And I'm going to be honest, man, I really like him as a Jedi as well. Like that whole thing just fits, right? There's really a lot of actors and actresses that I think it'd just be cool to see them as a Jedi or a Sith or whatever. But he just works. It makes sense. I feel like it's like an organic fit for Star Wars. And oh my gosh, do I feel so bad for that kid. Because they just really wrote that character into a hole and then just left him there and didn't know what to do with him. So, right, I basically am saying all this to get around to, we see Torben in the present day, and May gets to him in episode 2, okay? And she goes to assassinate him, and then he ends up doing the deed for her. He's like, hold on, what's that? Some poison you got? Bitch, hold up. I'm just gonna take care of it myself. What? Yeah. Okay, so that's a mystery, or it is presented to be one, right? What exactly would I'm very curious, man. What is your answer if I were to say, hey, so why did Torben take his own life?
So I should be able to just answer this. So the idea of it is that he took his life. At least my initial impression was, wow, something so terrible happened in the flashback that we haven't seen yet, that he was just like, oh, I need to take myself out. It's an honor thing. Do those dots connect? No,
not for me personally.
Sorry. Look, I am arguably I'm a freaking Star Wars apologist. I let all kinds of shit pass right by. And in this show, it's tough, man. It's tough. I'll go as far as to say, like, I actually don't completely hate this show. To be fair, I'll give it another watch and maybe I'll at least like it a little bit more. Okay, that's how much of a Star Wars nerd I am. But yeah, no, to answer your question on some of these things, it's shit like this where you're like, come on, man, with the writing. This one was written by Leslie Headland. I don't want to go into her, or she's the show creator, right? I don't want to like completely rail against her or anything. But I will say this. If you feel like, oh my God, she's terrible, we need to completely remove her from Star Wars. I don't know about all of that. Go and check out Russian Doll on Netflix if you ever want to see some mighty fine work from Leslie Headland. It's an absolutely stellar show. So she knows her shit, man. She can do her thing. She has to get it. It didn't quite come together here. That's all I'll say about it. It didn't quite come together, unfortunately, on Acolyte. That's.
And you know what? Although I'm not going to try and defend her a large amount. I haven't seen Russian Doll, so I mean, for what it's worth, I wouldn't be against checking that out. The one thing I will say is, I mean, even if that's great, I still don't think that like, just because somebody is a good filmmaker, storyteller, you've been a part of something that's successful, I don't know if that instantly determines that you now have authority to go into like any territory you want. So all I mean is like,
agreed. I do agree.
She may be.
I'm only saying that because I feel like I've seen so much out there leveled against her that it's like, oh my God, she can't do anything. It's like, no, she's capable. She may have dropped the ball here. Fair enough. I tend to agree. Unfortunately, it's like I wanted just to freaking succeed. I want everything in Star Wars to succeed. I think we both do. Just this wasn't those cases. So that's the only reason I bring that up. But I do agree with you. Yeah, just because you're good in one thing doesn't you just as easily flop tomorrow, the next day.
Well, and I also was going to throw in as a slight benefit of the doubt, right? So to vouch for your point, because I think it's a very fair point. We shouldn't just knock someone as a creator entirely. That's basically saying like, as an actor or actress being a part of one bad project, it's like, oh, now you're a terrible actor or actress. It's like, no, you were just part of one bad show or one bad movie, and maybe you didn't even have the best performance in that project, but that doesn't mean that speaks for you entirely. But anyway, what I was going to bring up is we also don't know how much outside interference that there was. I think a lot of times, even ourselves within discussions, we commonly forget for a brief moment that there is a lot of other hands in the pot when it comes to these things, especially like, right, studio specific interference. If it's even fair to call it interference, right? Or notes, critiques, whatever, things that they demand that you have no choice because they're the people that are paying the bills and keeping the lights on. And, so I can only imagine that there was probably a few things that may have been different. I don't know, nor do I truly believe deep down that the show would have been like phenomenal if it would have been just her with full creative control. But I will at least, again, say that I think part of it is, though, that maybe she didn't have the entirety of the control that she wanted. But I don't know, man. It's tough to tell from an outside perspective looking in. You could almost say the opposite. It seemed like maybe she was given like a little too much control and someone needed to kind of rein her back in a bit. I don't know. It's tough to really say.
It's tough to say. It's tough to say. Well, the Yoda inclusion, right? That feels like a thing of like maybe a studio executive like fucking smoking a cigar. You gotta have Yoda. Gotta have Yoda. Gotta have Yoda in. Well, he's not really a part of the show. Gotta have Yoda. Okay, we'll put Yoda in. Last second, we'll put Yoda.
There is a little bit of the feeling that kind of comes along with certain things were done per request, not because they fit within the story organically. And I do feel like that's one of those things. To be honest with you, I feel like the whole Ki-Adi-Mundi thing is part of that as well. So
yeah, so we're sticking a prequel character in there and looking at that line and that bit of dialogue that could have just as well been delivered by any random new character. It didn't necessarily need to be him, and it didn't necessarily need to, stir up all of that stupid controversy that came about because of the character's age or something like that, which had never
by all technicalities. He has a birth date that is not canon anymore because there's a lot of like Star Wars Legends things that when Disney bought it they decanonized. So his birth date was changed in like Wikipedia, so everybody feels as though the complaint is that, oh, you changed his birthday, and then there's people that are like, why is it a big deal that we changed his birthday? It's not like that his birthday changed, more so it's the fact that he's a character that's like alive approximately 50 to 70 years before he's supposed to be alive. And it is somewhere in that time frame. So that's all. You know what I mean? And is it truly the biggest deal in the world? No, but here's the critical element about the inclusion of that. It's the fact that, as I'm sure people who have been watching any sort of review on this has probably seen the clip played over and over again from Ki-Adi-Mundi in The Phantom Menace, where he goes, the Sith haven't been around for a millennium. And there's like, okay, but dude, you knew that there was a group of Jedi dying from an evil Force user like 50, 70 years ago. But so why would you say this?
Okay, I got you.
Council, if you are aware that there was like potentially a Sith or a rogue Jedi that was murdering other Jedi not that long ago, like definitely less than a millennium ago. So it's just one of those where, did we lose Anthony? You frozen, bud? Am I frozen? Oh man,
I am okay now. Are you hopefully okay?
Oh, whoo! That was
I can see you.
Huge sigh of relief here. Oh my god!
And we're back. How old is Ki-Adi-Mundi now? because we just went through a wormhole of some sort. Yeah, I mean, well, it wasn't the takeaway the prequel supposed to be when he says that line, isn't that speaking more to just the Jedi and him being the face of the Jedi, sort of being oblivious to what's going on? And that's more the meaning of the line, at least in that movie, where it just shows, boy, the Jedi really don't exactly know what's going on. The wool is being pulled over their eyes a little bit, or they're being clouded by the dark side. But I guess to your point, it's like, well, yeah, but now that's a good idea. But then I don't want to speak for you. You feel like it's being muddied now by just having him in there and having the knowledge of this potential dark side user.
Right. That's the biggest thing is like, if it just would have been a different guy,
gotcha.
You know what I mean? It would, this whole thing wouldn't even be an issue. If it was just somebody else, then it doesn't matter. But I feel like this is again,
no need to edit Wikipedia.
Right. This is a perfect example of I bet you, it could be so wrong, but I bet you they probably did just have a different character saying that, or like being the part that Ki-Adi-Mundi plays right in the show. I bet you they just had some other Jedi. I wouldn't be too shocked if there was someone else that was just like, hey, let's throw that Conehead guy in there. People recognize him. And I bet, and you know what I mean? That could be so wrong in that. And maybe it was Leslie herself, man, that was like, let's put that Conehead guy in there. And I'm only saying that because
also thank you for being PG-13 and describing it as a cone as opposed to something else.
Hey, let's get the guy with the erection head.
That's the word we were looking for.
There's a couple that could have fit in there. Just, it worked. But anyway, I feel like that was definitely, again, a good example of like, you're not doing this because it serves the show any true purpose or the story any true purpose, right? It's not like we need it to be this character. You're doing it for, I don't want to say the sole sake of like pissing people off, but really just like checking a box, which is the only reason why I'm inclined to believe that it was someone that is not as invested as like a fan of the stuff, that they just more so were like, hey, let's put something recognizable in here because we're close enough to the stuff that people recognize. It's like, you don't have to do that. Did you notice, by the way, there's apparently it's not Plo Koon, from what I understand. There's no thing in the credits that shows it, but dude, there's a Jedi that looks exactly like, it's like that's Plo Koon. I don't know why I'm keep messing his name up. Plo Koon.
I didn't notice that. I mean, I don't have as much of an issue with that. I think even going back to the old days of Star Wars movies, they'd reuse that Greedo costume over and over. Like 2 seconds after Han shot him, there'd be another one walking around in the background, and you're like, all right, it's the same species, but we all know it's the same costume.
That's the thing, is like, I can understand it's like
unnecessary though. Again, it's unnecessary. Just put a different character in there. There's so much stuff going on. It's just all right, whatever. And here's the thing: when the show isn't grabbing you and it's not engaging you and it's not pulling you along, and you're either bored by it or you're getting pissed off at certain things, then you're gonna hammer away at all of these little things along the way that bother you and piss you off because there's not enough good happening along the way for you to give this stuff a pass. For you to be like, yeah, that was kind of whack, but this was awesome, and that was awesome, and this was awesome. And that's what I think getting into it, like now I'm thinking out loud, maybe that's why this show was overall like a disappointment for me. Just not enough good. Too many kind of weak things or mediocre areas. There's some great stuff in here, but I mean, to echo your point earlier, I think for me, the execution was what was lacking here a lot with this show. I think there was a lot of potential, a whole lot of potential here. There was some pretty good stuff in there, but overall it was just an execution problem. But did you have like another major point? Just curious about the show.
Is that a rhetorical question?
I guess, do you have another 10 points?
Well, no, here's the thing, man. I feel like in a way I didn't even dive deep enough into where we had kind of stemmed off from. I don't want to.
Realistically speaking, I think we could go on and on about this for like till like tomorrow morning for crying out loud.
Of course. But I will at least I'll finalize a point with where we had kind of gotten back. I don't want to jump backwards too much here, but I will finalize it and have it be a way for us to launch into other stuff. The Torben thing. The only reason I wanted to go backwards to that is because, again, one of the ways that the show is presented, advertised, displayed is, hey, there's this really cool mystery element like we addressed. Okay, so now we get to the point where, again, here's one of the moments of the mystery. Right? We got one of these kind of like what's really happening here. And I dare I say, it's not just the flashback. I do feel like specifically what the heck was going on with Torben was one of the biggest questions. I mean, people may have, of course, not been more focused on him as a character more than anything else, but that is like one of the biggest things of this guy took his own life. That this has to be something large and substantial. And at the end of it, I couldn't even tell you what he did wrong other than be a spoiled little shit of a Jedi.
He wanted to go home. He just wanted to go home.
Even that, I'll tell you this right now. Like, some people were ripping on the fact of, oh, he just wanted to go home. Like, what a weak story point. Here's the thing. This is where it goes back to execution. Because if you write and execute this properly, you can't present it where you actually feel for him as an audience member that, damn, dude, this kid's really missing out on A, B, and C that's back at home, right? Give us something.
Yes, something more, some more substance to it. There's nothing, you're right. You bring up a great point. There's nothing intrinsically wrong with that idea, but it needs something a little more to it. And where it is right now is it just, I want to go home.
And then you kind of compound that with, now you have less of a time empathizing with him, because not only do we not know why he wants to go home, he's just a little brat that wants to go home, but then you compound that with the fact of, his stupidity, because they got proof, right? They tested both the girls, and they were able to get proof that these two separate children had the same genetic makeup. I forgot what terms they used, but you know what I mean? Because they had some like different Star Wars term for it. But the point is, they were able to prove they had it. Here's proof these two people are like actually the same person. And that is a virgins in the Force, which is what they were sent out to find. Okay, cool. You have proof of a virgins in the Force. The Jedi mentioned once you have that you can leave and bring it back to them, because that's what they're interested in. So then why do you jump on the speeder bike and then fly off on your own to go try and capture them? Which is like, dude, what are you trying to do? Like, literally kidnap these children? When the first thing that they're trying to defend is how Jedi don't kidnap children. So it's like, what was the point of even doing that? Even if you were to say, oh, emotions and whatever took over, but he should be smart enough. Like, this is where I go to say, they don't understand. The people that create the show, they don't understand Jedi, dare I say. I realize Jedi have not always been the same. They don't always need to act exactly the same in every time period. But he was in no way, shape, or form a definition of a Jedi, or specifically how a Padawan would act. When's the last time, bro, that in any sort of Star Wars lore you saw a Padawan like backtalk their master and then go do some shit like that? And I mean, I guess we could maybe throw Ahsoka into the ring a little bit, but I feel like that's a unique case. When you look at like the standardized practices of Jedi, they don't do that shit. They know better, they're taught better, they are disciplined, they're respectful. And even if they do have their still inner reserve feelings, they don't act out and lash out like that, because those are all signs of what they've been taught as those are things and emotions that could potentially lead to the dark side. So you don't do that. Right. So it's just like, I can't try. I'm trying, I should say, to really find a way to still somehow connect with this character, to give the storytelling a benefit of the doubt. And they, at every single point in turn, are not allowing me to do so as a viewer. But then they're acting like it's okay. And it's like, but you're proving to me with even just this one thing, right? We're still only talking about Torben here. And even with this individual singular thing, you can't seem to prove that you know the source material well enough to give us a believable set of events here. And then it's the fact that it all crashes and burns into the dumbest possible set of events afterwards, that, like after he gets there and him and Soul just climb up the wall to go ahead and get into the place to, again, kidnap the kids, I guess. What happens after that has got to be one of the most laughable, like, take your kid to work and have them write the show type of bullshit that I could possibly think of. I mean, let me ask this, and then I'm asking specific questions on purpose to try and like keep this as far as not just focus, but also because I'm super curious, because we've gotten a little bit into it, but not too deep into it. When oh God, I don't remember her name, but when the mother, okay,
Mhm.
the mother who is like the one that is clearly in charge of everything,
Mhm.
Anastasia. Okay,
Okay,
so
yes.
when Mother Anastasia is essentially turning into a black smoke demon, right? What do you think? I'm just kidding. Genuinely, as a viewer, what do you think she was going to do?
I had issues with the editing there. To answer your question, I was unclear about it. It felt like so she was supposed to have been transporting. I didn't get that upon
Let me
first
be
viewing.
clear.
I got that. I feel like after the fact because I read it on Reddit. I think that's not when you watch a TV show. You should just get it when you watch it. You don't need to get it on Reddit 2 weeks later.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, so that's the point where she gets stabbed, right? Because it was thought that she was going to be a threat or something like that. I
Well,
don't
so
know
that is going to be my question. Is like to be a little more specific. Is do you feel like what she was doing was something that was like, did it come off as menacing? Did you take that as
yeah.
maybe she was like, trying to get into
At
almost a
best, unclear. At worst, menacing.
Agreed. Agreed.
Yeah.
The only reason I kind of get at that is just because, like, again, this is portrayed as a moment that, oh, shame on the Jedi
Yeah.
for doing what they did. Now, do I think Soul needed to straight up stab the cloud of smoke as this was going on? I don't know. I don't know if that was the right thing to do. I don't think it was the exact wrong thing. I just think that maybe it was probably acting a little too quick. Again, I think that is an example of that's not entirely a Jedi move. I think they
Yeah.
would have been more observant, not like they're just dumb enough to let danger smack them in the face, but I feel like they would
Mhm.
have been trying to understand themselves what was happening there. So I don't think, it's somewhere in the middle as far as whether it was good or bad or indifferent as far as to what Soul did. But I don't think it is justifiable to at all say that, hey, Mother Anastasia was in the right. I can't believe Soul did that. I mean, my gosh, she was just trying to let Osha go. Where would that be received? Like from someone again that
So
is completely uninvested, how would that be your takeaway?
yeah, boy, it's clunky, is what it is. The problem is it's clunky. That's what they're going for. So they're going for so it's almost like a tragic miscommunication that brought all of this conflict about, or at least helped fuel the fire of the conflict. But when it's clunky in execution, then we don't quite understand it, and then we're supposed to, like you said, think, oh, like the Jedi are just 100% completely in the wrong. It's like that's not really how the situation reads to me, though. In hindsight, that the Jedi are completely in the wrong. I know you want it to be that. And on that point, I'm going to go off on like another quick rant. I'll try to make a quick rant. I don't necessarily always want to see corrupt piece of shit Jedi. I really
Yeah.
don't. I just don't. I want to see fucking heroic badass Jedi. I really do. I'm just going to speak off, like off the cuff now at this point. So if you're going to give us a show that's about like fallen Jedi, yet again, I mean, we saw a little bit of like Jedi who are already fallen in the prequels, and I think it was handled a whole lot better there. But here we're doing it again. Then why can't we contrast that with at least one Jedi hero? Hey, you know what? Maybe a season 2 would have given us a Jedi to come in and try to clean up the mess. Like, hey, you know what? We have these Jedi over here who did this, and it was kind of bad. We have another Jedi trying to cover everything up, right? So now maybe season 2, again, I'm speculating, would have given us that heroic Jedi that I would want to see, that would come in and be like, all of this shit needs to stop. I don't know, man. But yeah, that just as a side note, that was another thing that disappointed me a little bit with this, was just that this was another story that's like, we're going to take our heroes and turn them into crap, and we're going to bring them down into the dirt. And it's just like, okay. If you are going to do that story again, or at least you're going to try to do that story, then it needs to be really, really good. And I think that was the problem here. So you're giving us a story that I don't really want, and then you're not executing it very well.
And I think because of what you said, we might actually be, or we should be that much more grateful that we're not getting a season 2, which I know still sounds weird. To clear the air, like you said before, I don't want Star Wars things to be canceled.
Oh,
Like
oh
it's
God,
very,
no.
it is very bittersweet to be relieved that there's not a second season for this show. I'd be like saying that out loud just sounds wrong, but I will say that, man, if there was a season 2, in a way it would have given us a little bit more of what we wanted, because it was speculated that the season 2 was supposed to focus more on Darth Plagueis and how he would essentially, we know the story. Obviously, we know that Chimere, or Smilo Ren, as people like to call him, and we know that May and Osha, they're not around for the rest of Star Wars and everything. So clearly, they only make it so far. Season 2, from what I understand, was going to possibly dive into the realms of Darth Plagueis, observing that whole, like, oh wow, you made children that are force sensitive. I want to try and do that, and that we would see potentially a young Palpatine, and it would be like Plagueis and Palpatine kind of overtaking Chimere in Osha, which, look, does that sound cool?
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
But so did the initial concept of the show in general when they first announced it. So it's like, I don't know. Plus, here's the thing. I also feel like, forgive me here, but how stupid of a move that would have been. You take the entirety of the first season to try and build up both May and Osha as these characters that we should be like super invested in. We want to see where their story goes. And then you're making it very clear that like their inevitable looming doom is right there, hiding out, right? Darth Plague is kind of peeking around and everything. That's their death. Like, he is going to be the end of them, which means like we know we have a very finite amount of time. Like, we already knew that we did, but you could have let it go as long as you wanted to. Now it's like we're just waiting until there's a conflict, until we know they're going to die, right? We know that Plagueis is going to take over. We know that Palpatine's going to rise to be his apprentice, and they're going to be the new 2 as far as like actual Sith. So I don't know. I just feel like, then what's the purpose of even introducing these other characters to be like, don't you like them?
To be fair, I mean, that's kind of a problem with lots of prequel series, right? When you like, oh, there's that character, but if sadly, if you know their demise, the challenge is always like, all right, so I know this character is gonna die. The challenge of it is in like can you make it intriguing? Can you make their life story? Can you make that path getting there interesting? I'm a huge fan of Breaking Bad, and when they went back and did Better Call Saul, which was a prequel, there were a ton of characters who you were like, oh my god, they're not in Breaking Bad, so that means they die, or oh, this character is in this place in Breaking Bad, so how did it get to that point? But that's an example of how to do that right. I would say Better Call Saul is an example of how to take these characters where even though they die, you can make it interesting as hell, and you can give an audience like all kinds of twists and interesting turns if they're written properly. Right. And here, I don't know that we were necessarily. I'll be fair to the show, like we were at least starting off on not the best foot in terms of just writing. So when you bring up a point about, hey, we know ultimately these characters are doomed, but now you're starting us off on a point where maybe the writing needs to be a whole lot better. I'm trying to be nice about it. Then you're not. We're not off to a good start. Right, we have again, to reiterate in a better way, we have a character that's doomed, and then we have like writing that needs some working on.
Yeah, and
like I don't see their journey being good. I don't see their journey like playing out very well.
Yeah, I agree. I also just don't see it starting off on a strong note. That's problem number one, right? Yeah, but then problem number 2 is just, it's not so much that I don't have the problem of like, we know these characters are going to die. There's so many stories, like countless stories where we watch characters, we know that their end is inevitable, or we've already seen how the future plays out, stuff along those lines. So like, that's okay. It's more so, again, we go back to the word execution here, right? So it's like the way that they're doing it, they are introducing this as though this is like the start of their journey to a certain degree, and it's like, no, you're really kind of just throwing us in at the last tail end of this, because that there's only so much time before the prequels, which means they can only be around for so much longer. And I think that's all it is. Like, you're kind of like pinning yourself into a corner unnecessarily, way too quick. They would have done better if they didn't introduce Plagueis whatsoever. I mean, number one, how many people do you think even understood who that was, bro? Like, did you know who it was when you first saw it?
I did, yeah. Although I had to go online because he has such a recognizable face, and I know that there's a pretty prominent image of it's a I don't know if it was the book with Palpatine and Plagueis, and it's like this nice side view of him. So that's where I recognized the face from. But I went online to confirm. I'm like, whoa, was that Plagueis? I was like 99% sure it was him. But I would assume for most like casual people who like have only seen like a few scattered episodes of like Mandalorian and they saw Empire Strikes Back 20 years ago. Yeah, if they happen to be checking out this show for whatever reason, they'd be like, "What? Who is that? Is that Palpatine? What am I? What am I?" I don't
Right?
know what
Was
I'm
that
looking at.
supposed to be something?
It's well, I don't know. At the very least, maybe those types of people might take it as like the things that we see at the end of a Marvel movie where there's some villain or something like, "Oh, I'm not sure who that is, but I guess he'll be in the sequel."
No, and that's a totally fair point. Actually, I like that. Right?
Something
Like
like
when
that.
when they first introduced Thanos, there was a lot of people that
Yeah,
were like, "Who the hell is that?" You know what I mean? You had a lot of comic book dorks that were like, "Dude, I know exactly who that is," but
yeah,
your average fan didn't know. So, I mean, that's a fair point, right? And I think it's one of those where the only reason I again stick to don't include that is it just feels like we don't even have enough answered about the two core characters between May and Osha to where it's like, I don't even feel like you need to introduce some other shit yet. There's still so much of like what's going on here right now that we haven't even got full clarity on. It's like almost you're like getting too ahead of yourself. And
yeah.
then and the other, as far as other things that would have been not so great to see, as interesting as that first part could have been, the part that I'm really glad they're not getting into is more with Yoda. So,
Mhm.
we addressed the fact that, Kiadi Mundi, it's already weird. He made that comment in the prequels. It's one of the only lines that he says in the
Mhm.
prequels, and yet they go out of their way to like, right, kind of deflate that and flip it on its head. Whatever, though. Okay. Like, I still think it's weird. It bothers me, but it's also one of those like I can brush under the rug. As soon as they would have started doing something similar to Yoda, like
Mm.
if they would have made it so that here's the problem. You either are trying to introduce that Yoda is going to be fooled by Vanestra, so the green lady,
Yeah.
or you're going to try and make it appear as though he knew about this Sith encounter and then just never spoke about it with the Jedi Council. And I don't believe either of those as a possibility. Like,
Ugh.
logic does not add up for either of those to make sense. I mean, granted, it's like, but wasn't he and the rest of the Jedi clouded from Palpatine and all that stuff in the yes, 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 yes. That's a different thing though than him being like openly involved in a situation that directly is impacting like Jedi he's with and around right now. Like,
Mhm.
all these Jedi dead they are. Funny that is, isn't it? And just like,
Yeah.
dude, he's gonna know, man. It's Yoda. He's gonna
Yeah.
know.
I'll say one thing here. You brought up one point I'll give the show credit for. I like that this show sort of established that there's different, like we knew of the Jedi Council in the prequels, and maybe even bigger fans than me knew all of this all the time. But I like that there's different levels, like to Jedi, to like you had this whole like a lower level of the Jedi Council that they like Yoda's like on the high. What is this specific? Is Yoda like on a high council of Jedi? Like obviously he's the master and stuff. But what I'm trying to get at is I like how they established that there's different levels. That over here you could have this like lower level of Jedi that are doing some stuff and it's kind of shady, and it might not reach up to the level of Yoda. And like you said, you bring up an excellent point because it is Yoda. They probably shouldn't even bring him in because we don't want his character being ruined by having him like get the wool pulled over his eyes here, right here in this show, and have him, have any kind of knowledge of potential Sith out there. Yeah, I'm with you. Like Kiadi Mundi, okay, we could brush that off, but Yoda, you can't do that. You can't brush off Yoda potentially knowing about all this. And even worse, dude, what if you bring Yoda in and he ends up helping to continue to cover things up or something? It's like, oh God. See, that's where I get off the Star Wars boat. That's where I will say Star Wars is dead if they start doing some shit like that. But I
Yeah.
don't know. It's tough to say if that's where that storyline was going. But you bring up a good point because my initial thing was like, oh, okay, Yoda, it feels a little crammed in. But you're right. When we think that out, or at least when you like take that to the next step about where that could have gone. Actually, that isn't very good. Like that could have went bad. That could have been very very sour. You know what? If they continue this in comic books or like a book or something like that, we'll see where it goes. I'm like morbidly curious
That's
because they have to bring
not
in
let
Yoda.
curiosity kill the cat.
Sure, but they've written themselves into a corner. Like if they bring out a comic book a year or two from now, or they bring out a novel a few years from now, they have to pick up on all of these threads. And the show left off with her talking to Yoda. The show left off with, with Plagueis, skulking around in the back of a cave. We have to pick up on those threads and continue the story. Do you think? Here, I'll throw one more thing out there. I don't know. Do you think that they would ever just dump this from the canon, or no? There's way too much ego involved.
There's been talks. Now, I don't think anyone from Disney themselves, but there's been talks amongst like the fan base, other content creators that are out there, and kind of having the same discussion. Because do you happen to know about the situation with the show Willow?
I know that it was canceled, and I know it was totally pulled from the stream. And I think part of the reason was just that they didn't want to pay the actors, but I'm not too sure. Grain of salt with that. Maybe I shouldn't even say it if I'm not too sure. But I'm not sure if that show is meant to be canon anymore to Willow.
I don't believe so. I mean, I could be definitely mistaken on that, but I believe that the reason that was done was because it performed so poorly. But I think it was all because, the intention is that this is no longer canon. And do I believe that they would do that with Acolyte? No. I would put my foot in the ring of I don't see them doing that. I just think that that's a little bit too much. I think that's going a little bit too far. Would I care if they decanonized it? Absolutely not. I think that there is really nothing of true value that would be missed if they did decanonize this. Like at the end of the day,
well, they would declare it Legends. I guess they could just say this is Legends now.
Sure. And that would, what? I mean, that'd be okay. If anything, I'll tell you this. Here's the reason why I would be really fine with them saying this is now classified as Legends. What that would prove is that they almost, forgive me because this is going to sound funny to some Star Wars fans, but like it almost proves that they're okay with diving into the concept of a Star Wars multiverse. I don't mean some nonsense like you're going to get multiple Anakin Skywalkers meeting each other. No, I just mean like it would be kind of nice, I guess, if they were okay with the concept of, hey, here's a Star Wars story. Like technically speaking, we could say it takes place within this time frame, but it's also not part of the main storyline. I realize that would be absurdly confusing, right? Like I really get it, but I also relate it to the way that DC is doing things. DC has their main story that they're focusing on that had all of like the Zack Snyder stuff. Now they're going to the James Gunn Superman movie and he's building out his universe, but there's still the Matt Reeves Batman movie. There's still the Joaquin Phoenix Joker movies, right? So you've got those two distinctly separate things that are called DC Elseworlds, right? So in other words, like here's just some cool properties, here's some cool stories with characters you know and love, and you could always try to make sense of where this takes place somewhere, but this isn't really connected to everything else. It's just another cool story to enjoy.
I think that's fine. Yeah, and there are, and to be fair, there are fans of the show. There is an outpouring of people who are like, "Hey, renew the Acolyte." So at least for them, that would still be some kind of an acknowledgement that the show is still exists. Actually, I could see them taking it as a complete insult that they would maybe go the other way with it. Because if they want the show renewed, they obviously don't want to be made Legends, right? But I'm just saying, so for whatever it's worth, I know there are fans of the show, and believe me, I wanted to be a fan of the show. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. In the end, that's where it goes. But
and with that, I don't see them, even with what I just brought up there. I don't see them doing any of that. Okay, I don't probably be a reality. Interesting for sure. Again, believable as a possibility. I'd be a little shocked they'd be willing to go that far. But again, I go backwards to I don't even think they're willing to pull it from Disney Plus, mainly because they invested so damn much into this. And I think at the end of the day, it stirs up enough controversy in pop culture to where I think they're willing to kind of just like let it survive, and maybe I feel like they hope it'll grow some cult following over time or something like that. But I mean, that's a huge investment to just say we're going to pull from the series in totality. However, man, when you look at it, and I don't actually have the numbers, but the numbers of the viewings, right? Like it's horrible, dude. Like barely anybody watched the show. It's actually kind of crazy when you see how much it is spoken about within social media and YouTube and all type of stuff. It's actually alarming to see how low the viewership numbers are in comparison to that. You literally have more people watching shit like what we're doing than watching the show itself. You know what I mean? Like people are more interested in watching people talk about the show than actually watching the show itself. And honestly, after seeing it, I could see where people are coming from. It's got to just be an interesting conversation. But that's the only one detail that I think might work in the favor of if they were considering to pull it, it's because the viewership is so abysmally low that they might feel like it's not even worth keeping on there. But I don't know how that stuff works or what the decision is going into that.
On the opposite side, I've heard good things about the numbers for Andor, that people are discovering it a lot more, and those numbers have creeped up, and now they're headed into season 2. I know you. I'm not sure if you were as into that show, but I love that show, and I'm glad to see that for the most part, people are finding that show and it's finding its audience, and I'm glad it's getting its season 2. And I've heard good things about it, and it'll be awesome to like sort of do like a nice marathon of that show one day, like season 1, season 2, and then like go right into Rogue One. So look, I guess like what's the moral of the story is that there's some good Star Wars out there, and there's some not so good Star Wars. You know what? I think at the end of the day, there's still probably something for everyone. So maybe we shouldn't be so down on it overall. Not you and I per se. I think we're still pretty positive despite some of the things. I think all of this criticism that we've said is all very level-headed and valid. We're not screaming about this show. We're not losing sleep over it at all. Shit, I wish I had enough energy to be as angry about this as some people are. I wish I had that in me. I just don't.
Oh, yeah, and I think it's a little silly to get that worked up. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. Do I dislike it? Yeah, I really find it difficult to say anything that I do enjoy other than the choreography of a lot of the fight scenes. And honestly, man, there's even some of their fight scenes that are like, this is just ridiculously whack.
What did you think? Just curious. I thought the visuals and stuff were okay for the most part. Like the look of the show, the costumes, the outfits. I'm just curious. Did some of that at least work for you?
Yeah, the aesthetic of it all, right? It looked like Star Wars, you know what I mean? Like I gave him that, like it looked like Star Wars more than Andor looked like Star Wars to me.
Yeah.
Andor felt like a very really cool sci-fi show, and they just were like, oh shit, put the Star Wars name on it because it's a Star Wars show. But like, I don't even mean that as a huge knock to it.
I know, but I
like it is easily, I would say Andor is the least Star Warsy property that they put out. You know what I mean? And again, that's not even to say that determines how good of a show it is or how bad. I did actually enjoy quite a few elements of the show.
And we're speaking of visuals, and I agree in that.
So just strictly with visuals and everything. It's just because in Andor, there's like, as people mentioned, there's a lack of aliens. You know, there's not really any, like, you don't see stormtroopers rolling around or something like that. So this did, with Acolyte, at least give me the aesthetic feel of, all right, yeah, they're in Star Wars. What I will say, though, is actually, here's a funny thing that how that's a negative as well. It's not a negative that it looked like Star Wars. What's a negative is that they didn't seemingly go out of their way to any extent to make it unique to the time frame or era that they were in. You know, one thing that I will give George Lucas a shit ton of credit on is the fact that he doesn't just make planets seem very different with their living situations. He also seems like, or makes it seem as though the eras of time that you're in, right? Like when you go to a planet during the prequels, it ain't the same as when you go there during the original trilogy and so on and so forth and everything. This did nothing to establish itself as you are in the High Republic era of Star Wars right now. This is Jedi at their peak. Coruscant looked like Coruscant, dude. Every place looked like every place would normally look. And is that okay? Sure. I don't mean that as like, oh, like how dare they? But it seemed like a missed opportunity. It's like, why even make a big deal about being in this different time frame if you're not even going to really take the time to like aesthetically showcase that it's in a different time frame? Like the Jedis were the only thing that they did a little bit of that because they gave them a little bit of different attire. Like they had different versions and variations of their robes. All right, cool. But again, there was like nothing else that made me feel as though like it was just like, oh, dude, we're in the prequels. That's it,
Yeah.
So at least with that, in between, and then as far as like the again action, what I will give a huge compliment to is the lightsaber choreography. I thought they really did a good job. Like Smilo Ren, his attack style, his fighting style is sick. He's got like such a vicious, aggressive, but it's so smooth and fluent at the same time. I know some people that don't know about cortosis, which is the material that his helmet is made out of. I understand if you didn't know what that was. Some people were hating on the fact of, well, dude, he's headbutting lightsabers and knocking them out. I know what cortosis is, and when I saw, I was like, that's fucking dope. So,
and it makes sense within that universe. It's like, yes, of course he would have that. He's gonna be fighting Jedi. Yeah.
So right, it makes sense that he would have it, that like the way he would use it. So all that stuff really worked. A lot of the things that didn't work for me was any of the hand-to-hand combat. So like the very first fight with Master Indara and May, I was just like that. I don't know. It was like, all right, you're trying to pull out some Matrix moves here because you've got the Matrix lady. I get it, but it didn't really work for me entirely. And then the fight, oh my gosh, the fight between Osha and May was like, that shit was laughable to me, man. It was like, it almost just seemed as though they were doing a training experience together. Yeah. They were like, let's just make it look like we're really fighting and we're not training. But right, let's try. It just looked silly. It looked really silly. I didn't enjoy that whatsoever. On top of the fact that I didn't enjoy the performance of Amanda Stenberg whatsoever. And I'm sorry, because I know it's like how we said with Leslie Edlin. I don't mean to just say that because she did bad in this one thing, that means that, oh, she's a horrible actress and she can never be good in anything. I don't mean to say that, and I'm not saying that. But if we were to just simply keep the conversation isolated around how she did in the show, the fact that she played two different characters and had seemingly little to no difference in her performance with either one, nor did she really have a difference in her performance when either of those characters were going through anything, I can't sit here and confidently say, yeah, she's got my stamp of approval as a great actress, and I can't wait to see what she does next. Dude, have you seen the memes about her face during every reaction? Like, so happy, sad, angry, calm, stressed, whatever. And it's just the same face of hers in every picture of those. What did you think of her performance?
I thought that, like, I felt like it was just she was just sort of there in the first episode. Didn't really pull me in. And then I felt like as the show wore on, I got into her performance a little bit more. So I got used to her in the role. And then I thought that it seemed it got better as it went along. That's about all I can say. Yeah. That would be my honest opinion of it. But I think that the writing kind of failed her. Like, I feel like, and maybe even the direction, because I don't mean to hammer into the prequels on behalf of this show, but like I feel like the writing in the prequels had some issues, and then you had the direction in the prequels that had some issues with just basic little things like line delivery. It's like, okay, so we have a line here. The line is a little clunky, but if you're a good enough performer, look, that's a tough thing, because if you're a good enough performer, then you could usually take a bad line and make it badass anyway. But that's not always the case. Maybe it's younger actors that struggle with that a little bit more. I don't know. What was it that Harrison Ford famously said to George Lucas about, dialogue? Like, you could write this shit, but you can't always say it. But I don't know. In the case of this show, I feel like you have a couple things just not working. You have the performances maybe not always working, and you have the writing always not working. And then the actors aren't necessarily always elevating the material the way they could be.
Yeah, it is a collective effort. And actually, I'll say that again. So, one thing that is not working in her favor specifically, or really anybody in the show's favor, is yes, the writing in itself is not giving them any good material to work off of. And then, to be fair, like with the direction, we could blame the directors just as much, because it's your responsibility as a director that if an actor or an actress is not delivering the performance that you need, then you have to be like, hey, great, so cut, Cool. Not bad, right? Let's go ahead and do it again. But if we can just dial up the emotion to a believable level, okay, that would be fantastic.
Yeah. It's funny because it's like you want to be a little nice and respectful about this stuff, but yeah, like, can we make it believable now? Can we try not being cardboard?
Yeah, just that's kind of like, again, the absolute barest of minimums that we can reach here. So anyway, I do think it's a collective thing that you can kind of point the finger in multiple directions as to why it didn't turn out well. But I just feel bad because like she's the lead of the show and she's not just playing one but two characters. And it just, I don't know. I think that was another thing that really worked against them. I do think it was a smart move for them to go with I hope it's okay to call it like a lesser known actress because I didn't really know about her before this. And I think, again, that works, generally speaking, for Star Wars related projects to get people that you just don't really know that well, that aren't like highly associated with other things. So that was smart. But I just think that they focused a little too much, dare I say. I know this could be taken many ways here, but I feel like they focused a little too much on just checking certain boxes of like, we're going to pick her because she is this specific ethnicity and, has this specific she identifies as such and a sexual orientation or whatever, and things that to each their own. It's okay. You can be whatever you want to do and be is fine, but that doesn't determine if you should be leading a Star Wars show. And I think it seems as though, possibly because there seems to be something with Lucasfilm in general right now where there's like a direct focus on that. I don't really get it, man. So maybe, again, I could be so off the mark it's not even funny, but it appears as though that's where the choice came from. And I feel bad because it doesn't really seem like that choice worked in their favor. So, you got someone who can't really bring a good performance to the character. You got someone who can't really write the character. And you got other people that don't even know how to give critiques on the character's performance as they're doing it. So a whole ring of things that just add up to a bad product. I will say, right, I do want to go ahead and, if you're cool with it, it's tough, man. There's so many other things, actually, that as I'm saying this, that I still want to bring up. And who knows, I won't rule out the fact that since John's not here and he hasn't gotten his chance to throw his, piece in.
I'm curious what his thoughts would be on this.
Yes, that perhaps we can go ahead and maybe it's fair to say that we can extend the Acolyte conversation to a degree, as far as in a different rule of three stream. But with where we're at, I do want to go ahead. I mean, obviously, right, the thumbnail that you had created led to a different Star Wars project being mentioned. So as much as we may be, kind of indifferent apparently on Acolyte and, kind of, I guess, just as indifferent on the feelings of it being canceled and no season 2, okay, right, so be it. Pull out the tiny violin and get me a box of tissues, I guess. There is at least the next show on the horizon that we now have a trailer for from D23. So we got the Skeleton Crew that is coming up. And so you, from what it seems like from our discussion before and from how you were speaking on it earlier a little bit, you seem to be very much in the realm of, I'm excited, I'm down, let's do it, I want this show. So you're feeling very pumped for it, right?
I'm positive about this one. I think, like, this, I'm hoping it will be really good. This will be a disappointment if it's not good, but I guess you could say that about anything Star Wars related, especially. Yeah, man, I feel like it's tapping into, obviously it's going for all of those nostalgia feels. It really is. I mean, you can see, look at the suburbs that behind me. So they are very, very obviously trying to go for the coming of age Goonies vibe to this ET vibe there, but yet they're doing it in a way, or at least hopefully they're going to do it in a way that's still sort of fresh and unique. So I am excited about this show. Everything that I've seen thus far and heard thus far, I've heard a couple of interviews, I believe, with Jude Law. He seems piped. He seems pumped and excited about the show. So that's like a good sign. Yeah, and hey, I mean, if you're someone who, like you were talking about Andor, like, hey, it would have been nice to have seen a few more aliens in that show. This show looks like one of the little kids is an alien creature. It's one of the creatures from Return of the Jedi in Jabba's palace. One of the band members, the little blue elephant dude. Like, he seems like a main character. So if you're into like you want to see some more alien characters and stuff like that, it seems like this show is gonna have it. And I think just putting Jude Law in there, like that's a get for Star Wars. He's a pretty notable actor and a lot of talent there. And I don't know jack squat about the kid actors at all, but I mean, they're, hopefully they'll be able to pull this off as well. I'm excited for this one. I think it has a freaking whole ton of potential. I think the only thing I'm wondering, the fun thing that I'm wondering about now is Jude Law's character. Is Jude Law's character a Jedi? Or is he not? Or is he sort of like one of those people? One of the characters in Obi-Wan was like a character who was like pretending to be a Jedi, but he wasn't. And I'm getting those vibes more from him, where like he's like more like a scam artist or something. So that's one of the fun things that I'm just sort of speculating about with the show. Like what is it? What is his character exactly? But yeah, I could talk about this one a lot, but overall, pretty pumped and positive about it. How about you?
Well, so at least I wanted to kind of address the first thing is I do believe it was confirmed. So they say he's cast as a character that is called, oh gosh, Jod.
It's a weird name, right?
Yeah, Jod Wood.
Yes, I believe so.
I believe, but it literally says a Force user.
Oh, okay, all right. So, all right, fair, so, yeah, but that doesn't mean Jedi,
right? It doesn't specify Jedi, so he could be perhaps. They have a lot of stories of characters who were Jedi that they're not any longer after the after Order 66. So perhaps that's something that we can kind of see here. I do think it's funny because like they're man, it's such a typical thing to just pull out of nowhere of just like, and here's another Jedi that survived Order 66, and here's another Jedi. Like we got the video games, the Fallen Order series, which my God, is that a good series? I love those games. Well, the first one, I haven't played the second one. But anyway, Cal Kestis from that game. Dude, super cool character. A Jedi that happened to survive Order 66. Do I have an issue with it? No, because I always think it's really cool to know that they're still out there and everything. Yeah. But it also does kind of degrade Order 66.
You don't want to go back to that well too much, right? Like because you want Luke to still be the last Jedi. You want the original trilogy to still really feel like Luke is on his own. I don't want to feel like, but there's another 50 Jedi over here, and there's another 20 that are frozen carbonite over here, and I don't want too much of that. And there's Cal Kestis running around, and Ahsoka's. I don't know. Again, where was Ahsoka during the original trilogy? Did I miss something? Where was she? Do we know yet, or is she just okay? All right, I don't know if I missed something.
I don't know, man. I don't know. Now, to be fair.
Maybe.
No, yeah, they never really. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. I have not the slightest clue. It's a great question,
but I think that's the problem. I know that, and again, I know the reality. Her character didn't exist in the show, but blah blah blah. We know that.
Yeah, right. But
fair enough. Yeah,
she was around. She was around. No, man. And so here's the thing. With that being said, jokes aside, just like I brought up about the actor who plays Torben. Who, my gosh, I've already forgotten that name already. I feel so bad. But regardless.
You're up again. But go on.
Law is a great example of someone that I feel like, dude, he really fits well as a Jedi. Like, I just think it works. Like, it clicks. And yes, he's obviously a prestigious actor, so I think it is a big grab for Star Wars. But, God, man, it just makes me feel as though, like, why'd you have to get him for this? And I only say that because I'm not going to sit here and say I'm not excited for the show. I am down for it. I'm hoping it's a really fun ride. I'm hoping it's way better. Yes, that it is. All of us are even expecting. I think it's a huge gamble. I'm very much into like following behind the scenes stuff and rumors and leaks or whatever. And I won't say too much. I haven't even heard like really too much, but I have heard a lot of things about like people not exactly thinking that it's going to turn out well. And trust me, I'm not going to try and prejudge it because of that. But it always is like, not cool to hear that stuff, Yeah,
especially this early on.
It's almost better if you don't hear anything, if it's just like in normal production, that it doesn't really get a hubbub made about it whatsoever. That's usually almost a good thing, right? But with this, I'm just kind of curious of like, I wonder what has people already giving some sort of, negative tones towards it. And then I do just think it's a gamble in general because you have a child-centric cast that it's like, right, so like you said, like the Goonies type of thing, which could be great because look at the Goonies. Or it could easily come off as why didn't you just do this as an animated show? type of premise. Like, and that's almost where I'm at. I feel like this could really work. I'm down for it. I'm excited at the moment, but I still kind of pick up this feeling of like, I just feel like this could have easily been another within like Dave Filoni's style of animation of just like this cool, again, same exact concept, but just like literally animated. It seems like when you step into the realm of live action, you got to be taking it up a notch, dare I say. Not like animation is allowed to take it down a notch. That's not what I mean.
I still see what you're saying. You're right. It feels like a higher bar, but yet, yeah, it feels like maybe it's the flexibility of animation. I don't know what it is it's a whole different media. Yeah,
but also, you're reaching a broader audience with the live action.
Yeah.
I think again, that's what it's like. If you make an animated series that's about a group of kids doing what they're going on this adventure, well, chances are you're probably going to have more kids than not watching the animated series. So I think it's like almost going to be a home run for you there. When you do it as live action, you are trying to, whether you want to or not, you're still trying to appeal to the masses, like the older audience that has been dying and yearning for something that resembles what Star Wars used to be. And could this be that? Again, potentially, man. I really hope it is.
Oh yeah.
That's just the biggest thing. Is it's like it's a huge gamble, and I think it's a big risk to like have this be the follow up to Acolyte. I don't know if I don't think that was on purpose. I don't think they knew.
Yeah, no, I don't think they were expecting Acolyte to be received this poorly. It just sort of is what it is. Now it's more just like it's almost like the equivalent of like. Well, maybe it'll be received much better because it's like imagine like a comedy act and a comedian gets up there and fucking bombs, and then the next guy comes up. He could just be like, "Why did the chicken cross the road?" Yes, why did the chicken cross the road? The last guy sucked so much, and now I'm gonna laugh at that joke.
Yeah. I will say,
maybe it'll work in its favor, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm most curious about this at the moment, just because again, we only know so much about the show. And I like that the trailer only gave so much away. Like you get an idea of what's going on, but still there's that there's way more to come. But my biggest curiosity is this is taking place within the I think it's funny to call it the Mandoverse because it's just Star Wars. But this is supposedly like within the same time frame, like the time era as the Mandalorian. You think it's inevitable that we're going to get an appearance from Mando and Grogu?
Yeah. Oh, geez. Good question. Do we want them in there? I could see them I could see them shoving those characters in there because they're so popular, but maybe not. I mean, they have their own movie now and they have a season 4 is confirmed. We know we'll be getting that. So I almost don't want to see them in the show. I would like to see the show stand on its own 2 feet. But that's just preference,
I wouldn't mind if it was one of those blink and you miss it cameos. Like
true, because Mando's riding around the universe doing different missions and stuff. Yeah, blink and you miss it could be fun. That might be a way to approach that if you do it at all.
Like I wouldn't mind honestly if their adventure somehow took them to I don't know. I'm trying to think of like somewhere that Mando's been. So like he spent a lot of time on Tatooine, if I'm not mistaken. Right. So okay, so like I wouldn't mind if like they went to Tatooine at one point. And it'd be like if they made no mention of it ever, right? There was not a big focus on it. But if you just saw like Mando's ship sitting in the background as they're like walking by in one scene, be like, is that Mando's ship? And then just see like, again, have it be a blink and you miss it type thing where like as they're in a room in like the back corner of the room, you see like Mando and Grogu and he's like talking some business to somebody or whatever. And like, and here's the cool thing. Maybe you could even go this far, right? Because that's more of a blink and you miss it. I wouldn't mind if they were like all of a sudden as that's happened, like they're in the background, you're focused on the skeleton crew characters and what they're saying, obviously, but then all of a sudden like a shot goes off, like like someone fires a pistol in the back and like it draws their attention. You just see Mando like just like look down or whatever, and he's like, "Come on, kid," and like him and Grogu just like move or whatever, and they're just like, "What the fuck was that?" And but it never gets like looked into or examined or whatever. You know what I mean? Like that's it. Like that's all we get. Like
that's our tiniest bit of fan service, and everybody else could just geek out, and then we'll move on. Maybe we could follow up on it in a comic book 10 years from now or something.
No, are you kidding me? Now all of a sudden we're going to get a crossover series that explains everything that led up to that moment and everything after that moment.
Hey, you know what? I wanted to ask you one other question too, and it's Skeleton Crew related. because I saw some people online. The picture behind me here is like the suburbs of Star Wars, which is kind of new. What were your thoughts on that? Did it throw you off a little? Because I will say at first I was like, oh, suburbs and Star Wars, that's going to take a little getting used to. But by now I'm like, okay, I guess it makes sense. But it's going to take some getting used to. What are your thoughts on it?
It's
Not feeling it, or
it's too regular, man.
right.
It's
I
too.
would tend to agree. I feel like we do need to get used to it, but it needs to be a little more Star Warsy, right? Like we need like a something in here, something more Star Wars, because this just looks like Connecticut to me, or
No, you know what that looks like?
I don't know. It just feels
Your background looks like as if they were gonna shoot a live action Ed, Edd n Eddy movie.
Yeah,
like they would use that street, as like the street to where everybody lived on the cul-de-sac that everyone is at. I think it's a cul-de-sac. I can't tell. But the point is, like, it just looks like a regular on Earth street.
So,
why
regular. That's my only
are
critique.
all the houses shaped like houses? Do you know what I mean? Like, why aren't they just weird huts?
Yeah, do something a little more with it, like we've seen in a million other areas, right, of Star Wars, right? They go to a place here, and they'll shoot in Italy or something, but they'll change the framework and they'll put some lights and wires and stuff. Whereas these suburbs, they just feel a little too just normal. That's the only thing. But I'm actually not opposed to the idea. I think it's pretty cool and it's pretty different, and it certainly fits with the whole idea of a Goonies type Star Wars. Hey, Eric, I wanted to say real quick shout out to Eric and Dan. I think dropped by, and I think somebody else was here too.
Yes, Drew stopped by a little bit ago. I know you might not be here.
So much, guys.
Good to see you nonetheless, man.
Thank you so much, guys.
Eric, for what it's worth, to try and I don't know how to answer this in detail. What did you miss? A lot more in-depth discussion about how and why the Acolyte doesn't really work on multiple levels. But then we just started to get into, as far as Skeleton Crew, the trailer, our initial thoughts, and like the hope, I guess, of what it could be. Yeah. And damn it better be good.
Yeah. Hey, do we know anything about the villains of this show, or do you know what? I haven't been able to check into it too much. I've seen the trailer and that's about it. So that'll be another interesting thing. Where are they going with the villains?
I don't remember the episode, but it was only one episode. I think it was the second season. So I think it's in the second season of The Mandalorian. There's like this space pirate that Mando fights against. And from what I understand, I think that space pirate is like supposed to be one of the main villains of Skeleton Crew. That's what was like, it was first spoken about when that happened. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. That's like really ahead of the curve here, but sure, Now, from what I understand, that episode of Mando makes it seem like that dude eats the dust at the end. Like, I could swear dies.
Well, yeah, when you said that, I was like, I could have sworn that character died, but then in my head, I'm thinking, well, maybe the show takes place, before he died. But that's all. I could square that away pretty easily if it's the same character. But in that case, if you just want a pirate, I feel like you can just be safe and just create a new evil pirate character. But I guess, if they're going with a pirate character, then again, that's going to fall completely in line with the whole Goonies thing, isn't it?
Yes, I definitely think so. I also feel like with them doing space pirates, do you know the character, because he's been in both Rebels and Clone Wars, but Hondo?
Oh, sure. I got to see him in Florida not too long ago.
Oh, there. Yeah. Yes. Damn, dude, they really went all out on that Hondo. Like,
yeah.
But
down on Hondo. Actually, he's an awesome character. I really like that character.
I'd love to see him pop up in Skeleton Crew.
Oh yes, because he hasn't showed up in live action just yet, right? No, he hasn't, dude. I mean, even all criticisms with Boba Fett. I mean, to this day, that Cad Bane introduction, just perfection. I still love that. Say what you will about wait, was it Book of Boba Fett, or am I mixing? No, it was Book of Boba Fett, right? Yeah, with Cad Bane. So yeah, whenever they bring in those Clone Wars characters, man, I'm on board. I mean, yes, it would be nice if the stories and everything served the characters. I get it, but it is nice to just bring them into live action.
Well, at least it wouldn't feel too out of place. Anything that involves like space pirating, if you're going to throw Hondo in there, it fits. That's what the dude is to a T.
Yeah, that would be a fun character. Geez, now that you say it, I'm going to be disappointed if he's not in the show.
And who knows, man? Again, we might be sitting here if the show, hypothetically, if it ain't that good, we might be pretty fucking relieved he wasn't in the show.
Yeah, true. Well, you know what? I'd like to follow up on this. Like, when is the show coming on? Is it 2025? I think, right?
I believe.
Or is it
No,
the end
wait,
of
hold
this
on.
year?
I think it's hold on. I'm about to speak too quickly. Let's good old Google.
Maybe a mid-season stream or something,
3rd, bro. December.
Oh, okay. 3rd. All right. Let's see how, you know what, if the show is good enough, it might just prompt us to try to get a stream going or something like that. I mean, look at this. I mean, just the aftermath of Acolyte and a trailer prompted us to just get this stream going. So,
well, that's right, man. We don't need much of anything in order to have a cool
no, realistically speaking, it's Star Wars. We could sit and just rattle on about the Ewok movie. Speaking of which, we should do a stream on those Ewok movies. I was gonna ask you about that because I don't know if you ever got a chance to see them, and I thought it could be fun if you haven't seen them to just because you might consider them ridiculous, but it still might be a fun topic to talk about.
Bro, it would be fun to do like watch along parties for those.
A watch along party would be good too, because whether you love it or hate it, again, I think at the very least it's interesting. You know, it's
it's easier to watch something of such horrid quality when you know going into it is such horrid quality.
I was 6. I assure you, it was awesome.
Of course. We'll make sure to bring on 6-year-old Anthony as a guest.
I'll see if I can dig him up. I did not love the trailer for Skeleton Crew, but may give it a shot. Okay, all right. Well, I'm just curious, Eric, what didn't you like about it if you're still watching?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm kind of right there with you, Eric, of like, I didn't hate it at all. It was more so of like, okay, cool, like it's a trailer, like we got something, I can go off with some. It gave me better feelings than not as good feelings, but I'm still, at least, you know, kind of in the middle. I'm just hopeful. I'm just optimistic.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I'm looking forward to the Andor trailer, man. That's gonna be, because again, I'm a fan of Andor, so I'm looking forward to that trailer. Hopefully, dropping sometime soon.
Looking forward to Andor season 2 a lot more than I was with season 1. And again, I ended up thankfully walking away from season 1 with good feelings.
Oh, you finished? Okay, good to know.
Yeah, no, definitely. But it's one of those where, again, I stand by the fact that it is the least Star Wars-y project that they've ever made. However, it seems like season 2 is, I don't want to say the polar opposite of that, but there's a lot of Star Wars-y things that they're already talking about. Like, I don't know if you heard, but they already confirmed director Krennic is coming back in for season 2.
Oh, okay. I mean, that makes sense, but yeah. And we'll see K2SO, I guess, right?
Yep, and they got, so Alan Tudyk's back to voice K2SO. They got Saw Gerrera is coming back.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like that, it literally just those 3 things immediately make it more Star Wars-like. So the other thing that's really interesting about Andor season 2 is the fact that it's going to be spread out over so much more time. So like season 1, I don't know how much time it's supposed to
I think it was 1 year. I think it was 1 year, but I could be wrong. I think it was like 1 year of his life.
Yeah, this is more so like, if I'm not mistaken, with Andor, I think it's each 3 episodes, it's going to be broken up, I believe, or maybe it's 2. I don't know. But like 3 episodes is like a 2-year span.
Yeah. So that's interesting. And then they're going to do like a little bit of a time jump, and then we'll go butt right up to the head of the beginning, I should say, of Rogue One. So it's going to be interesting.
I'm curious as to how close, like literally how much are they going to creep up directly into, because the reason I say that is because I think Rogue One is very prominently known for the fact that its ending is literally the beginning of A New Hope. Like you could just start up A New Hope.
Absolutely, the sets, the music cues, all of that stuff. My guess is they're gonna do that. I guess if we want to know how the show's gonna end, we could go do a quick rewatch on Rogue One. I believe it starts off with him meeting someone in an alleyway or something like, right? And then he ends up killing the guy. It's like a rebel. So maybe that will be sort of like he'll be on his way to meet that guy, and we know he's going to end up killing him, unfortunately.
I mean, I'd be down for that.
Something like that.
Of it leading directly into to where literally you could just play it immediately after and it make complete sense. I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, it's fun, man.
That's what they're going towards with this, and makes me that much more excited. Seems like Eric's excited as well. He's down to watch some season 2 of Andor. Yeah, man. Yeah, should be some good stuff. That's, I wanted to go ahead and I did want to start to bring this to a little bit more of a close. But before we do, I was going to ask you as far as like one more thing real fast, because with all of this talk of stuff, whether it's bad, whether it's some good stuff, there's one thing that seemed to be left out of the picture. And I'm just curious as far as like what your thoughts are. So it was announced that there was going to be a new Star Wars movie. And no, I am not talking about Mandalorian and Grogu. There is just what's kind of tentatively titled as, and I know they're not going to keep this, but it's like the Rey movie is what it's been basically acknowledged as. Okay. So they got Daisy Ridley to come back.
Yes.
And like they brought her back out at Star Wars Celebration. Hey, Rey's coming back. We're going to see a story that takes place, like 10 years after the sequel trilogy where she's rebuilding the Jedi Order. And apparently she's not going to be the main character. It's going to be about like 2 other Jedis that she's training or something like that. Okay, right. I don't know about you. I wasn't exactly jumping for joy at the prospect of that being the next movie that they wanted to do, even with Mando and Grogu coming out before that. But notice that with everything that they spoke about at D23, which was a lot of stuff, man, they had a jam-packed D23 this year, and yet not a single whisper about the Rey movie. Do you feel that's intentional? I mean, what do you think, man?
It's definitely not a good sign because I feel like we saw this with the Rian Johnson movies, which they haven't quite canceled, but we know they've canceled, but they're not canceled, but we know they're canceled. And I feel like sadly, and this is why it's tough to ever get excited about any kind of Star Wars announcements, because you get if you are hyped if you are excited about the Rey movie, which for the record, actually, I love Daisy Ridley. I thought that she was one of the stronger parts in throughout the sequel movies. So I was kind of excited for this. I was like, oh, okay. Her character didn't quite develop her character as much as I would have liked to have seen in the sequels. So if anything, I was hoping, hey, this is another shot for her character to sort of really, make a name for herself. It's almost like a redemption, sort of like we saw with Anakin. Like, I feel like we got more of him in the Ahsoka series, and I was like, all right, Hayden Christensen was able to come back and show, really show his chops. So now Daisy Ridley, I know she has a lot more to show, so let's give her a chance. But now, when we're starting to see, we're not hearing any more about it and it feels like it's in development hell, I'm starting to feel like I think this might be another one that's also not happening. Now, if you hated the sequels or you weren't a fan of her, then I guess it's going to be just a non-issue. For me, it was just it'll just be like another sort of minor disappointment. Okay, they announced the thing and they pulled the thing. What are you going to do? Yeah. What are you going to do? It's embarrassing, man. It's freaking embarrassing that they can't get their shit together.
Yes,
I would suggest maybe stop announcing shit. Like, have a script, have it ready to go. Have a good script. Let me be clear. Have a good script. Have it ready to go. Have the actors signed. Maybe help even be into post-production and then announce it. Like, what is all of this? Like, we're gonna maybe write a script 3 years from now. It's like, well, and also I think 3 years from now, should I announce? Jesus Christ! Even with my YouTube videos, if I'm not sure I'm gonna do a thing, I don't even say anything. But then. But Disney is just, what it is though. They have to answer to shareholders. I think it's a very complicated situation, and sometimes they have to make announcements.
But then just be more vague about it. Just be more vague. You know what I mean? And if the shareholders don't like that, then seriously, then be willing to have a discussion with the shareholders or deliver a message to them of, we understand that perhaps there's more knowledge that would want to be known about these projects, and we can't wait to give it to you. But we're going to be honest, because we take the creative process seriously and we want to make sure that our investments collectively are being put to a good use. We would like to take more time to flesh these storylines and characters out more, because we know that a lot is riding on this. So we want to make sure that we deliver. I cannot imagine any shareholder with a level head would be like, no, fuck you, just give me the content now. Because we obviously witnessed how not good that goes. So yeah, I don't know, man. I think the problem is when they do this, when they say things, when they throw out stuff and announcements, we get comments like what Eric's throwing out here, where Star Wars movies just can't be believed to be real until they have a trailer, basically. And man, I understand what you mean, because if anyone would be like, no, you shouldn't feel that way. What else? What other proof do we have? Well, you gave the proof of there's the Rian Johnson trilogy.
Oh, that's just one thing. Yeah.
There's the David Benioff and DB Weiss trilogy. In case you don't, as far as for people watching, if you don't know who the 2 names I just said are, so David Benioff, DB Weiss, those were the main showrunners for Game of Thrones. Literally,
Eric.
At the end of the show. Yeah, so at the end of the show, so when season 8 was in production, that's when they got this tentative deal with Lucasfilm to do, again, a trilogy of Star Wars films that were not going to be connected to the Skywalker saga at all, right? So it's completely different stuff. There was hype and rumors that they were going to be doing something with the Old Republic stuff, which would have been really cool. But then season 8 of Game of Thrones went the way it did. And now, where the hell is that trilogy? Like, it's not, they haven't outright said it's canceled, we're not doing it, but it's basically, we're not doing it. And then ready? Just one more, okay, that I can think of. Maybe there's even more.
I think I know what you're going to say. Go ahead.
Patty Jenkins, bro.
Yep.
With
Rogue Squadron, right?
Rogue Squadron, right?
Yep.
Where's the development? You know what's funny is I looked it up before we started talking about this. I decided just for the hell of it to Google Rogue Squadron and see if there was any updated news. The most recent thing that I was able to find was from March 14th of this year. Okay, so we're talking 6 months ago, and Patty Jenkins was like, hey, it's back on track and in active development at Lucasfilm. I don't believe that for a moment, man.
The only thing I believe is the Mando and Grogu movie. That's about it. Where I could like that, I'm like 99% sure on. Why? Because everything's in place there. Pedro Pascal, and it's the Mandalorian is their one certified hit. Overall, most people dig it. We can be 99% sure that movie is happening.
Yes. Well, and here's the thing: they actually showed stuff from the Mando and Grogu movie at D23.
It's moving along. Yeah.
One of those where they didn't have much to show because they haven't really done much with the movie yet. But the point is, like, production is up and running with that movie. Like, they have started to film principal photography for that movie. So, like, it's fair to say, like, yes, this is a surefire thing. But yeah, man, like all those other things. Mind you, everybody, what we just announced there, right? So we got one person's trilogy, that's 3 movies, another 2 people's trilogy, that's another 3 movies, and then Patty Jenkins' Rogue Squadron, that is a total of 7 movies that they have been like, hey, you want 7 more Star Wars films? Well, fuck you, because you're not getting any of them. And why did you think you were in the first place? Like, that's exactly what you told us. Yeah, that's exactly what it feels like, right? It's like, but you said you were going to. And then it's like, I don't know. They have the audacity to gaslight and be like, well, we never said we weren't going to do them. Okay. But we're, so what am I supposed to feel? So yeah, it's a very weird predicament to be in. And again, I couldn't help but throw it in at the tail end of our conversation here because I thought it was such it's a very consciously specific move to not include any update or details about it within D23. Yeah. When, mind you, they only do D23 every 2 years, right? So this isn't like Comic-Con where it's every year. It's only every 2 years that they have that Disney event. So the fact that, again, nothing, not a single word was said one way or another is a bit concerning, man. And it makes me believe that that movie could very well be dead in the water, even though they did bring Daisy Ridley back out on stage, even though they announced the director already.
She seemed like she was into it. That has to be a huge freaking disappointment. I think she even made some money, like, to her credit. I think, like, you know what I mean, to like secure her for the movie or whatever. I think they may have even paid her, but that we know that doesn't even matter with Disney. They'll take the freaking loss. But I just thought of another movie. Wasn't Taika Waititi? Didn't he have something he was going to work on as well?
Oh my God, that's right. We're at 8 movies, everyone.
And I do feel like we're forgetting some stuff too. And I know if we hit Google, we could probably find a few more. But that's definitely 8. 100% sure that's definitely 8 movies. We're up to 8. How many did they release? What did we get? We got the 3. I'm trying to think. We had the sequel trilogy is 3, and we got Rogue One. I'm trying to compare now. We have Rogue One, so that's
so we have 2 trilogies. We have 2 trilogies, right? So there's Rian Johnson's trilogy.
No, but I'm talking about like that they actually released from Disney era. Right? We had, like, sequel movies were released, right? We had 3 movies released, and then we had Rogue One and Soul. So we got 5. So we've had more movies announced and not released than we've had actually released.
God, that hurts so much worse when you say it like
that. I'm always good at finding a worse way of looking at this.
But really, that puts it in perspective, man. Oh my gosh.
This is half empty.
Oh, God. That is such a good point, though. That is such a good point, man. It's like they're really trying to give DC a run for their money. I don't know if you remember DC was that.
I mean, I don't know if you want to count Boba Fett. No, was it Obi-Wan, which was supposed to be a movie and it got
Obi-Wan
chopped
was
up.
going to be a movie, but see, but they still did something with that, so I don't know if we can really take that as another one that was like, oh, this is a movie they never made, because at least they did something with that property. Whoa, Anthony, did you phase out of existence again? Oh wait, you're moving.
Oh, I did for a second. Usually when it happens, I stop talking for a second. But I'm glad we're back. I guess we're close to the end anyway, so it doesn't matter.
It's all good. It is all good indeed. Well, I'll tell you what. I happen to notice this as far as before bringing this more to a close.
Hey,
Brian, what's up, man? How you doing? Thank you for stopping by, and definitely as far as Anthony,
what's up, man?
I will say, Brian.
Yes, I was.
But I'll say, Brian, you're lucky because Anthony didn't even let us know about this. Usually, a Cinema Squad member has to sign off on being leased away, right, for a temporary period of time. So, want to go ahead and say
it's just there's so much bureaucracy and stuff. It's like that scene in the. What am I gonna say? I was gonna say it's like the scene in Andor when the ex-Imperial goes and he gets the job and it's just this big bureaucratic nightmare. That's what it's like to get released from and to go and do the podcasts with people from, it's like, how much paperwork we have sitting on Dan's desk. It's just like Joe is still officially waiting for his release. Okay. But
for what it's worth, we miss you, Joe. Man,
please come back. We do miss you.
Yeah, so, holy crap.
MG, thank you, man.
That's an understatement. Wow, that really caught me off guard. That hit my funny bone like right in the nose. Before we start to go, I saw there was this that was a quick question. It seems like it got squeezed in by Eric here. Do you guys think Cal Kestis is going to show up in live action? I only played the first game and enjoyed it, but haven't gotten a photo with the actor. May have sparked my interest in trying the second. First of all, yeah, so Eric met the dude that plays Cal Kestis, so Cameron Monaghan, which I'm jealous. That had to be a cool experience, so that is awesome. I have seen that picture, man. That's cool. Like, right, that's a dope memory to be able to keep.
Yeah.
Then as far as
he met the Game of Thrones actors too, right? I believe he but you can go on. Yeah, I believe he met the Game of Thrones actors. I feel like I saw some photos from that. Like you might.
I don't know. Which one's off the top of my head, but I believe someone.
But yeah, I'm sorry. You were going to say about Cal Kestis.
No, yeah, I do think he's going to show up in live action. I think that, look, they didn't go that far out of their way to make the character literally look identical to the actor for no reason. So I think that was very much a specific choice. I think that they played it smart by making like no commitment to it. And, it's not like it was like guaranteed like, oh, and hey, you're going to see him in this. But I think they kind of just left that door open for themselves on purpose so that if they ever wanted to incorporate him, whatever, place that makes the most sense, that they easily could. My guess or speculation is that they're probably going to try and keep it for like a big reveal that I'd say within like a movie. So I wouldn't actually be too shocked if, I don't know about the Mando and Grogu movie. I'm not going to say for sure, but I also wouldn't be opposed to the concept of that being involved. Like I could see where they would do that. There is supposed to be another movie. So besides Mando and Grogu, there's supposed to be like a bigger movie, if you will, that is the culmination of all of these Mando-verse shows. So like Mando, Ahsoka, Skeleton Crew, whatever. It's supposed to be like this big culminating event, Avengers-style event, if you will, where everything comes together. And I think that's where we'll probably get Cal Kestis. Because based on everything within the timeline, he should be alive and around right now. So
those two games, they take place between episode 3 and 4 or in the Mando sort of era? And I'm guessing he lives. I guess spoiler. That's like a spoiler. The character lives like past the second game, so he's still alive.
Right, and so they do take place as far as in that time frame. So
great.
It at least again keeps the door open that he could. Right, like it's very believable he could show up.
Yeah, I'd say so.
So Oh, and it looks like we got clarification. He did meet Kit Harington.
That's who it was.
Holy
very cool.
Jon Snow himself. Well, man, basically, although I know we make the joking remark about it all the time and we're serious, we could probably talk about this until we're both blue in the face, but I will go ahead and start to kind of just draw more to a close. Were there any final remarks, comments, concerns, fits of rage that you want to throw out into the universe for Star Wars?
No more energy for rage for me. I'm fine. I'm looking forward to look. Skeleton Crew is on its way. Andor season 2 is on its way. It is what it is with some hits and misses. I'm still rooting for Star Wars, and at the end of the day,
that's right. No, I'm right there with you, man. At the end of all of this, though Acolyte was what I felt personally was a disappointment, and it's okay, by the way, if you're someone out there that's watching this and you did enjoy the show, please realize like that's totally fine. And as a matter of fact, I know it sounds weird because like I would never agree with you, but that's cool. If you like the show, like that's cool. Like there are things that I enjoy that are easily acknowledged that like this is a bad show or this is a bad movie. But you know what? But I like it.
Yeah, it is what it is.
It makes my brain happy. So
I have a ton of schlocky movies and TV shows that I love. So who the hell am I? You know, so I feel the same way. Yeah. So guys, please, if you love this show, please by all means keep loving it. Do your thing. More power to you. That's freaking awesome.
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, right? Just I think it's one of those where if you did, cool. Obviously, as you can tell, we didn't exactly feel the same way, but it is a perfect time for me to say, let us know your thoughts down below if you happen to be seeing it this far into the stream. And honestly, if you've gotten this far, thank you incredibly for sticking along with us, whether you have been here live. So thank you for the people that were here live with us. If you happen to be checking this out on a rewatch, thank you kindly. We look forward very much to being able to bring the next Rule of 3 to you soon with all three of us, believe it or not. But I won't say an exact date because we're still setting things up and planning it out. But it will be soon. I can at least say that. It will be soon. Okay. So we'll come back, talk more Star Wars. Cinema Squad's going to be talking about some more movie-related news in the near future as well. So a lot cooking, everybody. We got a lot coming. We're looking forward to being able to bring a lot of stuff back to you, get back into action. Because if you haven't noticed, we've been a little bit MIA for a good chunk of the year. And, don't worry, it ain't staying that way. But that's that, right? I'll leave it there. With all that being said, subscribe to the channel.
Yes.
That just goes without saying, but that's literally the obligations of the contract of YouTube is they tell you that you have to tell people to subscribe to your channel before you end your videos or live streams. So make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like. That would be awesome and greatly appreciated. Eric, thank you so much. Great stream, even though I missed the middle. That's okay. It's what the rewatch is for. You guys ever going to do something like shooting the shit again? Hey, I'll tell you what we decided, I'll make this very brief here. So what we kind of ended on was that shooting the shit is by no means dead. It's just not intended to be like what it was before. We used to have where there was like seasons of shooting the shit. And then, we'd have guests on each week and everything like that. And it was great. It was great. I loved it, right? We all have very, very fond memories of shooting the shit. What we kind of agreed was that what we're going to do is leave shooting the shit to very like kind of special events. So as a quick example, holidays I think are one of the easiest ones to talk about. Like let's just say we were to do a New Year's Eve stream or something like that. It'd be like basically like, hey, shooting the shit for New Year's Eve. You know what I mean? Or maybe it was just because I don't know, some other special event that's not a holiday that I can't think of at the moment. It'd be a shooting because of this, right? So we want to more so just make it for like kind of specialized events, like an every now and again type thing. That's that. That's the best way to do it. But I'll tell you what, Eric, whether it is anything like this, right? It doesn't need to be shooting the shit. It could just be a regular stream. Love to have you back on at some point, man. Right? Have you chat with us. So anyway, with all that, thank you kindly, everybody. We appreciate you. Keep loving Star Wars. Keep having faith that it's not dead. And until next time, everybody, I'm finding the end. All right. Until next time, may the Force be with you.